that's going to serve as a launching pad for our discussion on today. One simple verse, and that's in the 38th verse of the 3rd chapter. This king, as battles are going on, is in the midst and saying a eulogistic verse of a prince. It simply says, "And the king said to his servants, 'Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel?'" 2 Samuel chapter 3 and in verse 38, these simple words that will catapult us into our message on today. Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? You may be seated all over the building. I'm pleased, beloved, to begin a new series. In fact, just over a week ago, I was actually homiletically stuck with a huge case of writer's block. The truth of the matter is, at about a week, after about 2 or 3 weeks of praying and thinking and listening, I didn't know what I was going to preach in February. I had assignments and appointments, and we had talks and staff, and oftentimes we try to schedule out the sermon series a quarter in advance. But I'm going to be honest, I was really just stuck, didn't know where I was going, and didn't know where God was leading me. And then on Sunday after church, I personally was on my way to kickball practice. And I was on my way to kickball practice and got a message from a friend of mine, another teammate of mine, who was asking me, had I heard the news? And by Sunday evening, most of us, either by call, by social media post, by television announcement, had heard the news that Kobe Bryant had tragically died in his helicopter crash. And as I was praying and meditating over Kobe Bryant's death, witnessing the massive reach that his death had, not only nationally, but globally, I began to remember a practice that I've begun some years ago. Some years ago, I began a practice when great icons die. If I feel like their life was interesting and intriguing, I take about myself finding a biography on them and immersing myself in it. So as their life chapter has been written, I just want to know more about them, who they were, and what made them tick. When Steve Jobs died, I went and found the tome written by Walter Isaacson. And if you ever have spare time to read about 700 pages, I encourage you to pick it up. Walter Isaacson writes a wonderful biography of Steve Jobs some years ago. When Aretha Franklin died, Aretha Franklin passed, the Queen of Soul, this woman that so many people have highlighted as maybe one of the most inspirational soul singers of our time. I didn't know much about Aretha Franklin other than what I had heard. You know that she was Clarence LaVon Franklin's daughter. And me being a preacher, I had actually read the biography of her father, Clarence LaVon Franklin, written by Nick Salvatore, I think. You can Google it. Clarence LaVon Franklin, I had read his biography. But as Aretha died, I had not read hers. And so if you have time to read 400 to 500 pages, there's a book called Respect that goes over vividly and meticulously the life of Aretha Franklin. In fact, what I would suggest, if you have Apple Music or some digital ability to look up most songs, while you read it, you should have your Apple Music phone right by you. Because in Respect, they detail, meticulously, Aretha's singing career. And so many songs I had never heard about. So many songs I had never heard her sing. And so as I was reading, I'd come across a series of songs. Then I'd just stop reading and push play on Apple Music and listen to many of the songs that I had never heard of as I was being more connected to the life of Aretha Franklin. Sunday, when Kobe died, I made up in my mind that I was going to read a biography or two on Kobe Bryant. And somewhere along, God inspired me to not only read a biography, but to use his life this week as a springboard for us to learn life lessons through his life and through his death. And so I want to recommend for you, if you want to catch up on the life of Kobe Bryant, 2 books I'd like to recommend. The first is a shorter version. Parents, if you want your children to have a version that they can read through really quick, I encourage you to read a book by Clayton Jeffries that simply is called Kobe Bryant, The Inspiring Stories of One of Basketball's Greatest Shooting Guards. This is written by Clayton Jeffries. Clayton Jeffries writes a book. It's a quick read. It's not a long read, and it's an easy read, and it really is kind of a surface read. But there's another book, if I can find it real quick, and it is by Lazenby. And I'm going to tell you who in just a second. Roland Lazenby. He writes a more intricate and more well-written biography of Kobe Bryant called Showboat, The Life of Kobe Bryant. If you're interested in reading more and understanding more about Kobe, I highly suggest you pick up one of those two biographies. Today, though, I want to take time to give 8 lessons that I believe we can learn from Kobe's life. And if you're looking for a title and you're writing notes, if you haven't seen it on social media, today's message is A Message from the Mamba. A message from the Mamba. This entire month, we'll be delving into the life of black heroes and black sheroes of our culture and our national landscape. I already can't wait for next week as we look into one of my favorite novelists, Toni Morrison, and we delve and dig into her life and see what her life has to teach and to tell us. But on today, we are looking at the life of Kobe Bryant. And I don't want to hold you long, and I got to get through these 8 lessons, all right? Because we got a Super Bowl to watch. Some of us got food and nachos to prepare. Some of us got wings to cook. And some of us got to be ready for the commercials and who's going to sing the national anthem and how well they're going to do. Somebody's already ready to post about how things are and who's what's best. But before we post, let's take a minute to learn 8 lessons, 8 messages that I believe we can glean from Kobe's life. Now, many of you may know that Kobe's full name is Kobe Bean Bryant. Kobe, his father got, Joe Bryant and Pamela Bryant, got from a steakhouse in the suburbs of Philadelphia, one of their favorite steakhouses. It was in a suburb called King of Prussia. Anybody here from Philadelphia? Y'all know? Okay, amen. Amen. I'm just telling you what I read. I don't know nothing about no King of Prussia. But in King of Prussia, there was a steakhouse that Joe Bryant liked, and he got Kobe's first name from that steakhouse. Many of you know Kobe's daddy played professional basketball. 8 years in the NBA, 8 more years in Italy. And his nickname over the course, because he had a little wiggle, he could juke a little bit. In other words, he could make you think he was going one way, and when you went that way, he'd go another. And after a while, they gave him the nickname Jelly Bean, Joe Jelly Bean Bryant. The nickname was so prominent in his life that he took the bean from Jelly Bean and made Kobe's middle name. Many of you know his whole name is Kobe Bean Bryant. But not only do we know his name, we also know his nickname, the name that I've chosen to put in the title of this message, the Black Mamba. Now, Kobe's not the first Black Mamba. If you're a sports fan, you know that Floyd Mayweather's uncle, Roger Mayweather, a 2-time boxing national champion, you know that Roger Mayweather's nickname was the Black Mamba. But Roger Mayweather is not the only person who was named the Black Mamba. If you've ever watched the Quentin Tarantino film, Kill Bill, now I know many of y'all too holy for that. Y'all don't really like watching stuff with gruesomeness and cursing and things like that. And that's why I'm here for you. That's why I got to watch this stuff, because I got to be able to relate to everybody and anybody. And Kill Bill, you may remember that Uma Thurman's assassin nickname was the Black Mamba. Kobe Bryant was watching Kill Bill one day, and he got captivated by Uma Thurman's character and captivated by the nickname, the Black Mamba. That might be helpful for somebody to know that Kobe Bryant got his nickname from a female character in a Quentin Tarantino movie. Kobe saw Uma Thurman killing and slicing and dicing all through the movie and went and looked up Mamba. He found out that the Mamba snake is 99% accurate in its deadly strike. that the Mamba snake strikes quickly, fast, and in quick succession. In other words, it can strike, instead of one bite at a time. As he was reading the details of the Mamba, he recognized that what he saw in that snake was how he saw himself and he saw his game. He wanted to be able to attack with surgical precision. He wanted to be able to have surgical precision and strike over and over again when you didn't even know it was coming. And so he named himself the Black Mamba. That's the first lesson I want to give you. Know that Kobe Bryant teaches us that all of us ought to have the power to name ourselves. Yes, our parents give us our real name, our birth name, but there's something great that happens when Kobe decides he's going to give his own self a nickname. Because in giving himself a nickname, he's not just describing who he is, he's prescribing who he wants to be. And all of us ought to recognize and realize that we have the power to name ourselves. Now, that doesn't hit you until you recognize how many of us are living under the shadows of someone else's expectations for us. Some of us have been stuck and have been cornered in our whole lives because we're trying to be who somebody else wants us to be. We're trying to be who our parents want us to be, who our friend or our bosses want us to be, who our spouse want us to be, who our partner want us to be. But what Kobe Bryant teaches us in naming himself is sometimes it's important to take the agency to define who you want to be, how you see yourself, and live up into that. That's the first lesson I want to give you that Kobe Bryant teaches us. Name yourself. Learn how to find who you want to be. Learn how to decide what you want to be. And live in the self-creative genius that God has given you. Take the power to name yourself. Second lesson I want to teach you comes from understanding why did Kobe have two numbers. Many of you have looked over the past week and you've seen that unlike other sports athletes, Wayne Gretzky, number 99, Jerry Rice, number 80, Walter Payton, number 34, Michael Jordan, number 23, that Kobe is really the first star that seems to have a bipolar identity. I mean, if you don't know anything about Kobe Bryant, you're trying to figure out who we celebrate, number 8 or number 24. How is it that he came to be the only sports figure that I know of in history to have two jerseys with two different numbers hung up in the Staples Center's rafters? I'm glad you asked. That's why I came from Smyrna to tell you today in Fayetteville, Georgia. What you may not realize is Kobe never wanted to be 8 or 24. In fact, Kobe wanted to keep his high school number at Lower Marion and move it into the pros. But his high school number was number 33. And if any of you are Lakers fans or know anything about basketball, you already recognize and realize why he could not wear number 33. Because there was a man, formerly known as Lou Alcindor, who changed his name at UCLA to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is the highest scoring person in NBA history, and number 33 is already hanging up in the rafters at Staples Center. So when Kobe went to the league, he could not be what he wanted to be and could not have the number that he wanted to have. Then he chose, all right, fine, I can't be 33. Give me 24. They looked, and there was already somebody who was being paid millions of dollars who was wearing that on his chest. And so Kobe had to go with plan C. And what he did was he took the total number of his number from an Adidas basketball camp. I believe it may have been like 143. And he took those numbers, added them all up. That made 8. And so that's how he became number 8 for the LA Lakers. Finally, after years went by, 24 became available, and he took 24. Now just think about that for a moment. Kobe Bryant has 2 numbers hanging up in the rafters, neither of which was his plan A. And everybody doesn't get where I'm going, but somebody knows where I'm going and wants to meet me there. Because there's somebody here who didn't get what you wanted the first time. You know what it feels like to have a plan A and somebody to have ulterior plans for you. But there's a lesson to that. Can I tell you the lesson? When you can't get what you want, do the best with what you have. That's what Kobe did. He couldn't get what he wanted, number 33, but he took that 8, he took that 24, and he made it so good that now number 8 and number 24 are standing in the Staples Center's rafter. Think about this. Kobe is the only athlete on the globe that has 2 numbers in the rafters. I'm sure he's proud of that. But he would have never gotten that if his plan A would have gone through. And there's somebody here with a Kobe Bryant testimony. You had a plan A, but God had a plan B, and God had a plan C, and God's plan B and C was bigger and greater than your plan A. Y'all know that's what happened to Jed Clampett when he was out shooting for some food. All he wanted was a dead rabbit. But plan B shot in a hole, and up came a bubbling crude. And somebody knows God can do more with plan C than you can do with plan A. So if you can't get what you want, do the best with what you have. I'm talking about messages from the Mamba. Name yourself. Take the power to creatively define yourself and live into that. Grow into that and be who you want to be. When you can't get what you want, do the best with what you have. Here's another lesson. Greatness has its own terms. And you can't create the terms for greatness. I remind myself all the time, greatness already has its terms. And one of greatness' largest terms is hard work. Kobe knew that. And if anybody knows anything about Kobe's life, this is the one thing, even though I was not a huge Kobe fan, y'all know who my guy is. Yeah. Before that, it was Allen Iverson. And before that, it was Michael Jordan. But one of the things I grew to respect as a competitor was the work ethic in Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant worked harder. Kobe Bryant worked longer at his craft than anyone else. That's what made him great. Not because he was 6'6", because there are a lot of people 6'6" who can't hit the backside of a barnyard with a basketball. That's what made him great, is the work ethic that took the natural gifts God gave him and optimized what they could do for him. That's what Jeffrey Colvin teaches us in a book you ought to read yourself called Talent is Overrated. In this book, Jeffrey Colvin debunks the idea of natural talent. What he does is he takes great person after great person and shows you that they were not born with any gene any different than us, but they just did what they did longer and they did what they did harder than anybody else. Mozart, Jerry Rice, Tiger Woods. Jeffrey Colvin goes on and on to show you their life story, to show you that Tiger Woods can't play golf naturally any better than you and me. The only difference in me and Tiger Woods played longer, and Tiger Woods worked harder at playing golf than any Mozart. Many people think Mozart was a musical genius, born into music, but that's not the case at all. The fact is, Mozart had a daddy who was a composer, and so Mozart came in out of the womb listening to great musical compositions. Between 3 and 5, his daddy began to make him start composing music at his home. It's not that Mozart has a better ear for music than you. Mozart has been composing music longer, and Mozart worked harder than you ever will trying to get the violin to go with the cello and the cello to go with the oboe. You know what I'm talking about. That's Mozart. Read it if you will. Talent is overrated. Kobe Bryant knew something about hard work. That's what Allen Iverson learned when he picked him up because they were in the same draft class. Kobe Bryant picked 12th or 13th. Allen Iverson picked first out of Georgetown. When Allen Iverson was playing basketball in L.A., Kobe Bryant picked him up their rookie year and took him out to dinner so they could compare notes about what it meant to be a rookie. And as they were comparing notes and having dinner, they were having a good time. Kobe Bryant took Allen Iverson back home, looked at Allen Iverson as he got to the hotel, and said, "What you got up for the rest of the night?" Well, if anybody knows anything about Allen Iverson, you can imagine what he had up. Allen Iverson said, "Man, I'm about to hit these L.A. streets. I'm about to go to the club." He looked at Kobe, said, "What you about to get into?" Kobe looked at him, and late at night, as the sun was already down and people were ready to go to bed, Kobe looked at Allen and said, "I'm about to go back to the gym." Kobe realized that greatness has its own terms, and one of greatness's terms is hard work. If you want to be great at anything, you won't slip up into it. If you want to be great at anything, you won't trip up into it. One of greatness's terms is that you've got to work longer and you've got to work harder than anybody else. Jason Williams learned that. Jason Williams was a star point guard from Duke University. He got drafted by the Chicago Bulls and was headed to a promising career before he got sidetracked by a motorcycle accident. That's why most of you common people don't know who he is. But those who know basketball know Jason Williams was a beast before that motorcycle accident. Jason Williams said one day he was playing the LA Lakers. And this is back when he was good and great. He used to take extra time to work hard at his craft. And so he decided that even before shoot-around, before the game, he would go by himself to the gym and make 300 shots. He said as he was going down the corridor to shoot by himself, he heard the faint echoes of a basketball bouncing. And when he walked in on the court, he said he walked in to shoot by himself, and there Kobe Bryant was on the other end, fully drenched with sweat from having already practiced. So Jason Williams decided, listen, I'm going to make 300 shots before I go to shoot-around, before shoot-around happens, before I play my game. I'm going to make 300 shots before I leave this gym. And so Jason Williams starts shooting. 1 went to 10, and 10 went to 100, and 100 went to 300. And he sat down being through with his workout and noticed Kobe still going. For 30 minutes, Jason Williams sat on the bench and decided, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to see just how long Kobe Bryant stays in this gym. Kobe Bryant stayed. 30 minutes later, they went to their respective lockers. And then Kobe Bryant, Jason Williams says, went for 30 or 40 that night and killed the Chicago Bulls in the LA Staples Center. Well, after the game, Jason Williams got up with him, and as he was dapping him up and they were giving their parting greeting, he said, man, Kobe, man, let me ask you something. How long do you stay in the gym before a game? Kobe Bryant looked at him. He said, man, tell the truth. I was really just about to go when you walked in. But when you walked in, I decided I was going to stay 30 minutes, however long you stayed. I was going to stay 30 minutes more because I wanted you to know that you weren't going to outwork me. Can I tell you, greatness has its own terms, and one of the terms is hard work. That's a lesson, a message from the Mamba. There's another message from the Mamba. Listen to this. It's a lesson about being bigger than you are great. Because what I love about Kobe is the day before he died, LeBron James had surpassed Kobe the night before, being third all-time on the all-time scoring list. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, born December 30th. Yeah, 1986. LeBron James surpassed Kobe for third all-time. LeBron and Kobe, you may remember, had been rivals their whole career. In fact, some of you remember the commercial with the LeBron James puppet and the Kobe Bryant puppet that came out in 2008 and 2009 as Nike expected them to meet in the finals. But LeBron lost to Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference Finals to Dwight Howard, and Orlando Magic ended up going and playing the LA Lakers, and it never came to pass. But these two rivals had been competing with each other their whole career. But on the night And as it approached that LeBron was about to pass Kobe, Kobe began to get interviews about how he felt. LeBron passing him on the all-time scoring list. And all Kobe did was enormously and effusively shower LeBron James with praise and tell him how glad he was. Here was Kobe Bryant, known when he came in the league to be cocky and arrogant, known when he came in the league to be antisocial, not only to his opponents, but even to his teammates. But he had grown to be a bigger person. And that's the lesson I want to give you on today that Kobe Bryant teaches us. Listen to this. Here's the lesson. Be good enough to achieve, but be big enough to be happy when somebody else achieves. Be good enough in your life to have achievements and accomplishments, but be big enough that when somebody else achieves, you can applaud them, you can congratulate them, and you can pat them on the back. I'm just trying to give you messages from the Mamba. Here's another message that I learned because many of us know how he died. Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash. And many of you may be wanting to know, why was Kobe taking a helicopter to something as simple as a game? If you know anything about Kobe Bryant, you know that years ago, as he was playing for LA, he chose for helicopter to be his primary mode of transportation. What you may not know is why. Many people think it was simply to get back and forth to practice so that he would beat the traffic and miss the traffic. But that really wasn't the reason. Kobe Bryant revealed in an interview one time that he was trying, as he began to be a father, to be there for his daughter's team and still feel the demands of what it meant to try to be one of the greatest players in the history of the world. And one day, as he was trying to fulfill his demands to be a great player, he got caught in traffic on the way back home and missed one of his daughter's recitals. Right then, he realized that if he was going to be a great player and a great dad, he was going to have to do something different. So he talked to his wife about how he wanted to, listen to this, be a carpool dad and pick his children up from school. Vanessa said, you got too many responsibilities. I know you're trying to be great. I know what the demands are of greatness. But Kobe looked at Vanessa and said, yeah, I want to be a great player, but I also want to be a great dad. I already miss enough time when we're on the road. When I'm here, I want to do the everyday, regular, ordinary, quotidian things that a parent does. Quotidian. Look it up when you get home. It just means common and everyday and ordinary. He wanted to do the quotidian things that a parent does with a child. And there's a lesson in that. And it's a lesson to all of our fathers who sometimes, through this thing called toxic masculinity, thinks there's something cool about working and not being there and doing the small things for our children. Here's the lesson that Kobe teaches us. If you are a father, take time to be a dad. If you are a father, make time to be a dad. Doing something so ordinary as being in the carpool line was so important to Kobe Bryant as a father that he purchased a helicopter so that he could make it in time to be there with soccer moms and moms who didn't work, so his children would know that he loved them so much that he would do the small things. Oh, I know, dads, you bring home the bacon and you're a provider, but there's nothing wrong with doing the small things. Taking your kid to work, helping them with a science project, combing their hair, washing their bottles, feeding them when they're sick. Too many of us have grown up in a tradition that have told us that there's something cool about a dad not doing the small things. But I love Kobe Bryant for the fact that he ordered and bought a helicopter just so he could be in the carpool line. If you're a father, take time to be a dad. Here's another thing that we learned in the tragic death of his daughter, Gigi. No parent wants to see their child get hurt, harmed, or danger. No parent wants to see their child die prematurely, cataclysmically, or tragically. And every parent tries their best to protect our children from hurt, harm, and danger. But we learned something on last Sunday, that there are some things that are out of our hands. No matter how rich Kobe was, no matter how smart he was, no matter how many languages he knew, and he spoke 5, no matter how great he was, there was nothing Kobe could do to keep his daughter from the snares of death. This is a lesson for us parents. Parents, you cannot always protect your kids, but you can always prepare them. You can't always protect your kids from harm, but you can prepare your kids for harm. You can't always protect your kids from death, but you can prepare your kids for death. And that's why right now, while we're in church, I want to encourage every parent who's here today to make spirituality a requirement and not an option. Because there will be a time when your children need something other than you. There will be a time where they need a power greater than you. There will be a time where your kids need something bigger than you. And so even if you can't protect your kids, you can prepare your kids by serving as an intermediary for them and their relationship with God. Church ought not be an option. It ought to be a requirement. Spirituality ought not be an option. It ought to be a requirement. Because when this life gets bigger than us, we need to know our children are connected to a God who holds the whole world in God's hands. Parents, you can't always protect your kids, but you can always prepare them. Here's the 7th lesson we learned from Kobe Bryant, and that is to reinvent yourself. One of the greatest things about Kobe was the few years we saw after his retirement. Now, that may not sound much to you, but if you know anything about professional athletes and retirement, you know that most professional athletes fall off an emotional, practical, and productive cliff when they're done. A statistic was given the other day, 80% of NFL players are broke and bankrupt 3 years after their last game. A statistic was given, over 50% of NFL players have some type of addiction 3 years after their last game, because they never come to grips with the thing that all of us have to come to grips with in some arena or some area of our life. Sometimes life has it that we can't always do what we've always done. It happens in many ways. Sometimes it happens when a spouse leaves us through death. Sometimes it happens through a divorce. Sometimes it happens through downsizing. Sometimes it happens through being laid off or fired. But at some point, if you've been living life long enough, you recognize and you realize you cannot always do what you've always done. What made Kobe so great is that he was about to achieve just as much after basketball as he did during basketball. 2 years after his retirement, he had already won an Oscar. 3 or 4 years after his retirement, he had already gained hundreds of millions in business investments that he made. If you've ever drank Body Armor, the new sports drink, then you know that Kobe Bryant put about $6 million of investment in the drink at the beginning and then sold for $200 million because he reinvented himself. He recognized even while he was playing, I can't always do what I've always done. And that's not just a practical lesson, that's a spiritual lesson, because if you don't believe that God has a next chapter for you, no matter what chapter you're going through, then you don't know the God that I serve. God is big enough to take me higher after everybody thinks I'm done. When people have written me off, when people have cast me off, God can make more out of my next chapter than God can out of my last chapter, but I've got to be willing to reinvent myself. That's the seventh lesson. Last lesson. Many people think that Kobe Bryant died a young man. And I share with the 8 o'clock crowd, there's something about getting older where young gets older with you. Yeah. When you were a kid, you thought young was 3 to 10. But when you became a teenager, you realized young was really about 13 to 21. Until you got in your 20s and you really realized young was in your 20s. Until you turned 30 and you realized if you were in your 30s, you still until you got in your 40s and you realized really 40 isn't old. And then you got in your 50s and you say, oh, I still feel. Yeah. Because as you get older, young gets older with you. That's what happens. Yeah. Never would I believe I'd have thought I was young at 43. Until I turned 43. March 29th, 44 is still going to be young. Because as we get old, young gets old with us. Part of the tragedy, though, is so many of us feel like Kobe died young. A 41-year-old man. No more life. No more sunsets at the end of the day. 41 years old. No more proms for his daughter. He won't be able to walk him down the aisle at 41. But I heard somebody talking about it the other day, and they then began to list some of Kobe's accomplishments in 41 years. They talked about how 18 times he was an all-star. They talked about how 5 times he was an NBA champion. They talked about how 1 time he was a season MVP. They talked about how 2 times he was an NBA Finals MVP. They talked about how 2 times he won a gold medal. They talked about how he had 4 daughters. 1 time he got married. When he retired, he won 1 Oscar. He said, listen, Kobe has done more in 41 years than many people have done in 82. He said, however old you are, you better hope you can achieve as much as Kobe did in his 41 years. And that left me with this last lesson as I turn it in and come to the home stretch. The last lesson that Kobe's death teaches us is do all you can while you can. That's what Kobe did in his 41 years. One of the things he said, the reason he could retire and not feel bad about leaving basketball is because he did all that he could in basketball while he could. And that's not just a lesson about basketball, that's a lesson about life. There's somebody in here who needs to make an apology, and you're waiting for some other time or some other month. But I've come to tell you, if you need to apologize to someone, do all you can while you can. There's somebody here who needs to repair a relationship, but you're worried about who's going to call first, who's going to email first. If there's a relationship in your life that needs reconciling, do all you can while you can. There's somebody here who is called to a new career or to start a business, and you're waiting for the right time, for the right moment. But what Kobe reminds us is if God has called you to write a book, write it. If God has called you to a business, start it. If God has called you to a degree, earn it. Do all you can while you can. That's not just a life lesson, that's a spiritual lesson, because we walk in the church every Sunday and think that we'll have another time if we don't feel like it to give God some praise. But every time we walk in the church, we ought to remember, like we sang at Sweet Home Baptist Church, this may be my last time. I don't know. And so just in case, when I walk in church, it's my last time to say thank you, God. I'm going to thank God all I can while I can, just in case I never see another Sunday. I'm going to come in church and serve God while I can, just in case the sun goes down and I don't see it rise back up. When you give me an opportunity to worship God, I'm going to worship God while I can. I've come to tell 5 people, you ought to give God some praise like it's your last time, because it may be the last time you hear me pray. It may be the last time you hear me say. It may be the last time I can say, thank you for saving me. Thank you for blessing me. Thank you for lifting me. Thank you for guiding me. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for walking with me. Thank you for talking with me. Do all you can. Do all you can. Do all you can. Do all you can. While you can. Name yourself. Own the power of self-determination. Creating who you want to be in the world and living in that. When you can't get what you want, do the best with what you have. Greatness has its own terms, and one of those terms is hard work. Be good enough to achieve, but be big enough to be happy when someone else achieves. If you are a father today, make time to be a dad. Make time to be a dad. Parents, we can't always protect our children, but we can prepare our children. Reinvent yourself, because you cannot always do what you've always done. Do all you can while you can. And that's a lesson someone needs to hear today in our spiritual walk.